This information you are about to hear and perhaps view, these are not necessarily the thoughts or the ideas of Gary C.Clement or the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with the parties this story is about or was interviewed for. Parts of this content may not be owned by or the property of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, G2 Network Media, or any other company we are affiliated with, and this information is strictly the opinion of those being interviewed. This content is for information purposes only, and although we may make reference to various news stories, we share our own independent beliefs about the content and provide our own opinions. Please enjoy the information. Hard News, hosted by Gary C.Clement. Today's news is made up of so many different issues, and it's hard to keep up. But we all know it's important to keep law enforcement in the community and society, as many in America have a problem doing the right thing. Growing up, my mother always said it's easy to do right, but so many people choose wrong, and once you get in trouble, it's very hard to get out of it. Hard News will tackle all issues that break the barriers of justice for all, freedom for all, and simply a good and strong meaning of democracy for all. The show covers politics, crime, gun violence in our communities, and will introduce guests who have a personal stake in these issues. So without further ado, please enjoy this week of Hard News, hosted by Gary C. Clement. Yes, this is Gary Clement, and welcome to Hard News, hosted by Gary C. Clement. Thank you for tuning in for yet another episode. In today's episode, we will look at the issues of gun and gang violence in the city of brotherly love. That's right, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As our guest today, we have a representative from the young people with Mr. Geremy Griffin. They call him Germ. And to represent the elderly crowd, we have Mr. Ron Dove. How are you all today?
Very good.
Good. Fantastic.
Good. Okay. So first of all, we're going to start with Ron. I know that being a young man in Philadelphia for you a long time ago, like I said, was an experience. Talk a little bit about what it was like to walk the streets and stuff back years ago. Everything was quiet. There was very little crime. People were very friendly. Compared to today, the atmosphere has totally changed. Talk a little bit about that for us, please.
Well, when I was coming up back in, let's say, the 50s, I went to Germantown High School. I graduated in 57. But prior to that, in the early 50s, when I was around 14, 15, you could walk the streets. You could walk through the different neighborhoods. And we were relatively peaceful. You didn't have to worry about anybody jumping you. I mean, they had random situations going on as far as shootings and so forth. That wasn't even a, And but then as time went on, when we going into different neighborhoods, when black people started moving into white neighborhoods and the white people started leaving, that was the beginning of the change. And as that kind of progressed, then eventually you started having more blacks in the communities, and then trouble started coming up a little bit more, But then they had a few situations where they would go into stores and rob, stores and so forth. It wasn't always fatal, but then someone gets shot. But rarely, did you read in the newspapers what happened back then on the level that it's happening today. It was more random back then. And when it happened, it was really big news, but you just didn't see it like that,
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And Geremy, today, like I said, I know you're significantly, younger than I am, as well as, Ron. What do you see since you've been, like I said, born and raised, I guess, in that area, from then until now, how have things changed? What do you see that's very different and stuff in the city right now?
Well, so I was born in the mid-'90s, late 90s. I'm 26, about to turn 27. And yes, I have been seeing an increase in crime, violent crime through at least media outtakes. And I think that's an important part to mention because, yeah, I did feel safer, I guess, years ago as a child, teenager, and now there's so much hostility. I'm hearing a lot of people are afraid to even go out of their houses, which is kind of ridiculous. This is still our neighborhood. This is still our city. These are people we know, you know what I mean, who are doing the violence. So we really have to take a hold of our community. But I think you're right. I think what I'm seeing is the media portraying as if it's Gotham. Like it's a comic book out here. There's all these villains and it's so close to home. And I just want to be clear, violent crimes technically, if you look at the data, violent crimes have been going down since the 80s. Since the 80s, violent crimes per 100,000 people actually have been going down. Rapes actually was up a little bit for the past 6 years. There's been an uptick in rapes, but as for violent crimes as a whole, the trend has been going down in this country. I just want to be clear about that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would you say that there in Philadelphia in particular, is there a particular area where it's worse than it is in other areas maybe?
I do believe that there are hot spots. So from the data I look at and what I've heard, and I'll take it from a real micro level to a more regional level. I believe it's a radius of 2 blocks from a bar. If you're 2 blocks from a bar, I think it increases like over 30-40%. How likely you are to be in a violent crime, especially one dealing with a gun. I think alcohol is a big contributor, so that's on a super micro level. Now, as for regionally in this city, I do believe there are certain hotspots for violent crimes, and especially those with guns. I believe that North Philly might have traditionally been the place, but throughout my life, Southwest has become more of a hot spot, too, since I've been living here, Southwest Philly. And, yeah, there's certain spots where crimes like drugs and Kensington, that was a big thing, hot spot for that. So I think definitely there are different crimes going on in different parts of the city. But for gun violence, I think right now North Philly and probably Southwest are probably the biggest two right now.
I see. Okay, so Ron, from your perspective, where you live, what is a hot spot? Where is a hot spot for crime closer to, I guess, to where your area is?
Well, I'm right in the middle of the hot spot. I mean, I'm in the middle of hell almost because I'm in the Germantown area.
Okay.
And we have a regular occurrence of gun violence on Germantown Avenue. I live on Green Street. One street over is Germantown Avenue. Just recently, a guy got shot in his barbershop. In fact, it was another barbershop killing maybe a year before that. Mm-hmm. Up on Germantown Avenue, they have a police squad that sits there all the time. But in spite of the fact that they sit there, there's a lot of violence here in Germantown. I mean, there's been shootings in this area over the years. I mean, it's just almost every month there's a shooting here. Now, I would almost venture to say that this area is one of the hot spots for gun violence. And I think what happened is a lot of traffic coming up from North Philly, maybe from South Philly, from different areas in the city, and they come to settle in Germantown. And that's where you have a lot of drug trafficking here in Germantown. And even though the community housing, the architect is beautiful, in some areas it's pristine, but it also attracts some bad elements. But I say this too. Back in history, there was a time that they had the Ira-Contra situation going on. I think it was in Salvador. And there were guns planted in the black community. And even as late as today, I have heard rumors that they have found guns in alleys, or just dropped off. And I kind of wonder if some of this stuff, I don't mean to put out a conspiracy theory, but I'm wondering if some of this stuff is orchestrated, because it's not coincidental. It's just too prolific to think that it's just a normal occurrence. But even today, when you get up in the morning and you look at your TV, you expect to see somebody got shot. I mean, it's almost every week. You turn your television on and the news in the morning, and they'll tell you who got shot. Some kids got shot. Some kids going to school. Some kids is afraid to go to school. So it might have spiked, but I tell you, it's still going on. But my area is a hot spot.
I see. Okay. Because I know that, like I said, when I lived there years ago, back in the 90s, my aunt lived up off of Broad Street, way uptown or whatnot. It was a pretty decent and nice community, and she, always warned me about, be careful, be careful who you hang with, be careful of the people in your surroundings and whatnot. And I guess I could say the most I ever got in regards to having any kind of problem actually was like maybe a ticket for parking somewhere downtown that, that I really didn't pay too much attention to, but never, had I had to deal with a situation where, there was active crime or that kind of thing and stuff. But it sounds like now in Philadelphia, a lot of that has changed now. Would you say that?
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about violence, yeah, it has gotten worse. I mean, each year I see it getting worse. And now you can play around with the numbers if you want. And some might say, okay, it's a little less deaths this year than it was last year, but it's still too high to be safe. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, but drugs, you got drugs in the community. You got homelessness. That's a whole nother thing that nobody's talking about. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that's homeless. Just like I was talking about in Los Angeles, they got tent cities out there, homeless people. Right. When you drive your car, you go downtown, you got people with signs, and they're standing out there on the roads begging for money, right? Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, I never seen none of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So when you have poverty, and another thing too, I mean, desperate people do desperate things. For example, if you have, let's say you can't pay your rent. The rents are going sky high, mm-hmm. and people are not able to keep up. The inflation is going high, and let's say some people fall through the cracks. Mm-hmm. Okay, they can't pay the rent. They can't, they can't take care of their bills and stuff. So now they're out there. Now some people are going to resort to doing violent things, but a whole lot of that contributes to, I think, the violence. As far as mm-hmm. homelessness. Poverty, drugs, and then you got your your regular crimes of passion and stuff like that. But it's almost like a culture now. I mean, it's a culture of the gun. I mean, it's like an OK Corral almost around here. Mm-hmm. But this is an epidemic the way I see it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I got.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I give a slightly different perspective?
Sure.
Now, mm-hmm. So here's my thing, Mr. Ron, and I hear exactly what you're saying. We are definitely in an epidemic, and I will say that it's definitely not safe enough. Like, we need to get it safer. That's what I will definitely agree about. But I will say there's crimes that I have not seen in my lifetime that my older aunts, uncles, family members, mother, father have told me about that I've never seen in my life. I mean, they used to tell me there were places in the city and in Delco and Philly where it was so racist at times. People used to beat the crap out the black kids if they go in the wrong neighborhood, like the Sunset Towns, right? So we don't have that anymore, right? You know what I mean? And those violent crimes weren't getting mentioned because no one was really getting arrested. It was kind of like, you know what I mean, law of the land. You feel what I'm saying? So the crimes definitely have changed a little bit, and I want to be clear about that. But I do want to also agree that there's a culture behind the gun itself that we didn't have back in the 60s or 50s or whenever time you were, you know, growing up. Like, I will say that I think it's a weird culture behind, like, oh, I got a gun, I'm not going to fight you. You know, fighting seemingly was a way bigger thing back in like the 80s, 70s, and 60s than it is now. Now it's a lot of, hey, I'm a teenager, and since you made me mad, I'm going to just shoot you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But on the, you know, just to give it some perspective, on the vice versa, there's a lot less gang-related crime today than it was back in the 70s and 80s, because people don't associate with the gangs of their neighborhoods anymore as much as they did. Not saying it don't happen. We know that it is definitely still happening, but definitely not as much as it was back in the 70s and 80s, where you would cross a certain intersection and you were almost on like a whole nother gang's turf and was about to get your behind beat. You know what I'm saying? So the crimes have definitely changed, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. You're taking it to another dimension there, and I agree. I think there's different categories of the crime. For example, what you mentioned, Jeremy, I experienced back in the day, and I was telling Gary today about, you know, they had gangs like the Diamond Street, they had the Zulu Nation, they had Norris Street, they had Crosstown, and like if you were in the wrong area, you could get your behind whooped. But then the other category that you spoke about was like is on the racism tip. Now I was just talking in general, but when it comes to crime because of is racism, then then you know you have the a neighborhood type of gang warfare. And then you have the general population gang situation. My brother was a warlord. He was a gang leader, and back in his day, there was killings of youth with you know gangs killing you know each other. One of his buddies got shot, and he finally realized that the error of his ways, and he decided to stop doing that and start working for you know, his people and getting into more or less community advocacy and stuff. But when you talk about the racism, you know, the violence, you find somebody hanging from a tree, you know, or either they down in Mississippi where they murdered people, like the Freedom Summer down there when they was going to trying to vote, they murdered people for coming down there trying to help those people. Martin Luther King was shot. Medgar Evers was shot. That was a gun thing that was directed to the civil rights.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But if you go in the categories, you know, like neighborhood gangs, yeah, a lot of that has ceased. Mm-hmm. There was a time when it was an element. You know, you better identify where you came from, who was your hood, you know, and. But they had a guy up in West Philly. What was his name? Mm-hmm. And he started a program to work against gang violence. And then there was some few politicians that got involved. And they really did a good job in quieting it down. But then what happened, a lot of the gangs that were terrorizing, they kind of, the top guys went underground and went into the gangster world. And then it became like the mafia. They had the black mafia, they had the junior mafia, and all these organizations. Because then they decided it wasn't just going to be gang fighting for gangs. Now it's about making money.
Right.
And if another gang, another drug gang got in the way, well, then that's open warfare right there. So then it went to a different level,
I
But
see.
yeah, but I put it in categories. I put it with the racism against black people. That's one thing, and I'm not so sure that you might have some people put some hoods on from other races, or the other race, and get a chance to get some target practice on black folks. But this is open. It's open season now. Anybody could put a hood on and go out and shoot somebody, and then they say, "Oh, it's black on black crime." How do you know it wasn't a white guy that shot somebody black?
Yeah.
But it's different. I say it's different categories of groupings of the gun violence.
I see. Okay, cool. I'm looking here now at some of the different stories that are going on there in Philadelphia in regards to crime or whatnot in the area. And this first story I see here, it says police identify man killed in triple shootings in Cobb Creek, Philadelphia. Then the next one is, I think you mentioned this one, Ron. It said man dead after shooting inside Kensington barbershop. Okay. And there's another one that says
Yes.
man wanted for shooting at Mayfair Bank of America ATM machine. And then to go further down, there's this case and stuff. Here's a former Philadelphia homicide detective charged with second-degree sexual assault. Okay, how much of this would you all say that the police are involved in a lot of these things or whatnot that are that are crime related or gun related issues? What would you all say?
Well, I'm going to come right out. If it's happening, I've heard it said some of the stuff in Center City or the downtown spots are the police. Like, because there are, stalkings of like, why would someone in regular, in a regular neighborhood come out of their way, go downtown and then shoot someone? So in broad daylight, stuff like that, people have said, yeah, that's an undercover cop and that kind of stuff. Now, that's a theory, that's a thought. Some of this other stuff, so let's go through each case and try to figure out what's happening really quickly. You said that the Cobbs Creek one was a triple homicide. Is that true?
Yes. The one for Cobbs Creek is a triple shooting in Cobbs Creek. Yes, in Philadelphia.
Okay, so that means that there had to be at least one person with one gun that killed 3 people, or there were multiple people with multiple guns. That's what that would mean, right? So that means that one person was able to get off and kill 3 people, and they can find that person. But we know that a lot of the homicides in the black community do not lead to an arrest. They don't. Okay. So if we talk about the police involvement, the first thing we got to talk about is why are blacks the number one race where the homicides don't lead to the arrest? Because that's kind of their involvement right there. Why can't these detectives just find the people? Now, we already know that it's partially due to the no snitching culture. So that's on us. That's on Black America. That's on the Black Americans. Okay, but are the police doing their job to get these cases to the DA, a clear-cut case to get someone put into jail? You know what I mean? That's the first thing. So there's police involvement in that. Are the police paying people to go run up into places and shoot people? I don't think so, but just like Mr. Ron alluded, where the heck are these guns coming from in the first place? Yeah. You know what I mean? Are they going out of their way to buy it? Are they coming from international sources? And why can't we find the serial number on any of these guns? Are they taking all the serial numbers off? I don't know, but I'm just trying to figure out why can't guns be accounted for easily? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, listen, you're really hitting on it. But when you talk about, why are black people targeted? It's been documented that some police officers, and I'm not down in the whole police department because I used to work in the police department, and I knew some good people in there, but you do have a rogue element out there, and there's some police officers. It was one situation where they said, we don't shoot white people, we shoot black people. There's some there was another conversation that captured, and he said they can't wait to get a chance. They hope something happens so they can get a chance to shoot some black people. You got racist cops out there who hate black people and just dying for the opportunity to shoot them. And if they get an opportunity to shoot, it might be 100 bullets flying, because that's a way that they can hide behind the blue and be able to exercise their racist hatred for black people. I mean, black men are an endangered species. They shot a black guy because they said they described him. They said, "Oh, he was big and he was over 6 foot, and I was scared." And so they shot. They used that as an excuse. I don't even know if this guy had a gun. This young kid. Wow. This young kid that was getting ready to pick up his twins, and this just recently happened, and he went to the wrong house, right?
Yeah. And
this guy, this old guy, 80-some years old, he saw the guy, he shot the kid, right? And then he stood over him and shot him again. But when he first described it, he said, he thought he was about 6 foot tall, and he was scared, and he shot him because he was afraid. The boy didn't have a gun.
Right.
Now, a lot of that is embedded in white America. There's a lot of hatred for black people. So to answer one of your questions, Geremy, we young black men today are basically an endangered species, because now we have intelligent young black men who are rising up, who are doing things. We got millionaires, we got multi-billionaires. In white society, they feel threatened by our move. The browning, and they're afraid of the browning of America, because things are going to change, and it's not going to stay the same. And this white supremacy thing is going down. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to go down without a fight. And every opportunity they can get to take one of us out, the ones that don't lack us. Now, I'm not going to paint everybody with a broad brush. We need the police. We need the good police officers that's out there that's trying to do the right thing. And unfortunately, the negative guys are giving them a bad name. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, where are the guns coming from? If you study the history, there was a thing where the CIA planted guns in the black community, and this was if they can keep us destabilized, I mean, let's go over in Africa. Mm-hmm. They're talking. You got this in the Sudan, where you got one general fighting against another general for power, but behind the scenes, you got people who manipulating stuff, because other people are over there in Africa taking the gold, they're taking the bauxite, they're taking all the minerals, and as long as they can keep other folks' attention on fighting each other, then they can slip in and take what they want. And it's a lot of this stuff is not just by accident. A lot of this stuff is planned. So these guns that are coming into the community, I've heard stories that guns have been planted in black communities, just like when they had downtown, when they had this protest, and they had Antifa or whatever, they had wearing the black, and they had people come in from out of town. A lot of white people came in from out of town, and they actually set up pallets of bricks, and and encourage youth to go break windows and break into the stores downtown. That gives us a bad name. Mm-hmm. And this was documented. These people came from out of town. Mm-hmm. and took advantage of the protests, where there was peaceful protesters, but you had some negative people coming there. So you got these outside activists that are doing stuff, manipulating things, and it looks like we black folks are savages. They're trying to make it look like that, but we are not. Mm-hmm. But a lot of us are being manipulated. So a lot of these guns, I think, are planted, and then it's just with the public school system, with not being able to get kids not getting educated, coming out of school can't read. It's like a funnel from the school to the prison. All of this stuff works together, with the education, with the poverty, with the homelessness. Any third world country where people are poor, you're going to have violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just automatic. So I think a lot of this stuff is orchestrated.
Okay. All right. So, all right, Geremy, you give me one solution real quick before we close, and then Ron, you can follow behind him.
Okay, well, I have absolutely no solution. I've thought hard about this. I've considered this. And like I said, I think the media is doing a good job of making the problem even bigger than it actually is. Now, I do agree we need safe streets. And, I think people shouldn't be afraid. I think we got to take charge of our community. I'm a Christian. And I believe people need a person of Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, for sure. Jesus, we need Jesus right now, like, literally. Because some of this stuff, I'm going to be honest, is actually demonic, too. But that's on a whole nother note. But, so we need that. And we need, we want children to listen to the elders and the elders to listen to the children. You can take that however you want, but there is not enough community listening to community. Heck, all this CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, we need a community listening to community. We got to start shunning people. As controversial as that sounds, we might have to start shunning people who are really doing wrong, people working for the feds, people trying to, collude with this group and that group. We need to start shunning these people. You think the Asians letting people just roll up into their movements and place bricks, No. And so we got to really start shunning, be like, hey, we're not letting you fool with our kids, our communities, our businesses until you stop fooling with these, selling our kids on a crack, So, yeah, we got to really look into all that. So real community organizing, community policing, and a spiritual awakening. That's the true solution. So, yeah.
I see. Okay, Ron?
Yeah, and I concur. I agree with Geremy. We can't take God out of the picture because that's all only person that we can turn to, that we can get some kind of solution from. But one of the things about the news media is controlled by a small group of people. You have the Hearst. It was Patty Hearst's father, Hearst news media,
right.
But they're controlled, and so they can only put out what the top will allow them to put out. And when another nation conquers another nation, the first thing they go for is the press, and then there's a lot of propaganda. And then when you put us out in a bad light, sometimes they want that put out there so people can see a group in a bad light, because they won't put positive stuff just like what Geremy is doing, something positive. They got young black people out here that are doing some sensational things. Why don't they put that in the news? Why would they just grab the negative and put it in the news? Why every morning you turn on your TV, you're about to be a person killing somebody? Why can't you show some black genius doing something? Why can't you show some young woman that's doing something positive? And on occasion, they're starting to do that. But like I say, the news media is control. We don't even get the news about what's happening in other countries and stuff. We don't get all the good news. But to break it down, do I have a solution? No. But like I concur with what Geremy say. I guess we have to just, God brought us this far. We have to hope that He ain't gonna let us down now. But then, on the other hand, how faithful are we to Him? Because it's like that's a whole other story. There's a lot of people who fall away from the church right now because they don't think the church is relevant to what their needs and stuff. I was listening to I'm talking about young people. I was listening on a radio program, WRD, and these young women, and she was talking about Christ, and she talking about, she separated into three categories: the Jesus of Nazareth, the Jesus Christ, and the Christ, who was and I'm listening to her talking about this, and she said, Jesus Christ. He said, that's the idea, And I'm saying, what is she talking about? Now, this is a young woman. She's about the same age as you, Jeremy. She's on the radio. And I'm listening, and you have young folks today, who some of them are going into different religions. But break it down, it's a matter of God. I mean, whoever they say they feel that God is, that's the only answer that I can see, because other than that, we all in trouble.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Hard News hosted by Gary C.Clement. Hard News is created, written, and produced by Gary C.Clement for G2 Network Media. This production, like all our productions, are produced in-house, and our guest comments are not solely our thoughts or views, but strictly their opinions. We are not responsible for their interpretations of the questions we ask and reserve the right to express our thoughts and opinions separately, with the overall objective to educate, inspire, and promote the positive and intriguing thoughts and news. If you have any news ideas, news stories that you want us to consider for discussion, please send them to gccpresents@yahoo.com. That's G as in Gary, C as in Charles, C as in Charles, presents@yahoo.com. This has been a G2 Network Media production. Copyright 2023.